let me put it on you. You have a big platform. You're somewhat of an intelligent, eloquent guy. What role do you do you play? Why aren't you that leader? Well, I would argue that you're in ways becoming that leader.
So I haven't taken enough risk. Is that your idea? What should I do or say at the moment?
No, you have taken quite big risks, and we'll talk about it.
All right.
But you're also on the outside shooting in, meaning you're dismantling the institution from the outside as opposed to becoming the institution.
Do you remember that thing you brought up when you were on The View?
The View?
I'm sorry, when you were on Oprah?
I didn't get the invite.
I'm sorry. When you were on Bill Maher's program, what was that thing you were saying? They don't know we're here. They may watch us.
Yeah.
They may quietly slip us a direct message, but they pretend that this internet thing is some dangerous place where only lunatics play.
Well, who has the bigger platform, The Portal or Bill Maher's program or The View?
Bill Maher and The View.
In terms of viewership or in terms of what's the metric of size?
Well, first of all, the key thing is take a newspaper and even imagine that it's completely fake, okay? And then it has very little in the way of circulation. Yet imagine that it's an 100-year-old paper and that it's still part of this game, this internal game of media. The key point is that those sources that have that kind of mark of respectability to the institutional structures matter in a way that even if I say something on a very large platform that makes a lot of sense, if it's outside of what I've called the gated institutional narrative or GIN, it sort of doesn't matter to the institutions. So the game is, if it happens outside of the club, we can pretend that it never happened.
How can you get the credibility and the authority from outside the gated institutional narrative?
Well, first of all, you and I both share institutional credibility coming from our associations. So we were both at MIT.
Yes.
Were you at Harvard at any point?
Nope.
Okay. Well,
I lived in Harvard Square.
So did I. But, at some level, the issue isn't whether you have credentials in that sense. The key question is, can you be trusted to file a flight plan and not deviate from that flight plan when you are in an interview situation? Will you stick to the talking points? I will not. Yeah. And that's why you're not going to be allowed in the general conversation which amplifies these sentiments.
But I'm still trying to...
So your point would be is that we're, let's say both... So you've done how many Joe Rogan?
4.
I've done 4 too, right? So both of us are somewhat frequent guests. The show is huge. You know the power as well as I do. And people are going to watch this conversation. Huge number watched our last one. By the way, I want to thank you for that one. That was a terrific, terrific conversation. Really did change my life. Lex, you're a brilliant interviewer. So thank you.
Thank you, Eric. You changed my life too, that you gave me a chance. So that was...
No. I'm so glad I did that one. What I would say is that we keep mistaking how big the audience is for whether or not you have the KISS. And the KISS is a different thing.
KISS? What does that stand for?
Well, it's not an acronym yet.
Okay.
Thank you for asking. It's a question of, are you part of the interoperable, institution-friendly discussion? And that's the discussion which we ultimately have to break into.
But that's what I'm trying to get at is how does Eric Weinstein become the president of the United States?
I shouldn't become the president of the United States. Not interested. Thank you very much for asking.
Okay. Get into a leadership position where, I guess I don't know what that means, but where you can inspire millions of people to inspire the sense of community, inspire the kind of actions required to overcome hardship, the kind of hardship that we may be experiencing, to inspire people to work hard and face the difficult, hard facts of the realities we're living through, all those kinds of things that you're talking about. That leader, can that leader emerge from the current institutions, or alternatively, can it also emerge from the outside? I guess that's what I was asking.
So my belief is that this is the last hurrah for the elderly centrist kleptocrats.
Can you define each of those terms?
Okay. Elderly, I mean people who were born at least a year before I was. That's a joke, you can laugh. No, because I'm born at the cusp of the Gen X boomer divide. So,
Yeah.
Centrist, they're pretending, there are two parties, Democrat and Republican Party in the United States. I think it's easier to think of the mainstream of both of them as part of an aggregate party that I sometimes call the looting party, which gets us to kleptocracy, which is ruled by thieves. And the great temptation has been to treat the U.S. like a trough, and you just have to get yours because it's not like we're doing anything productive. So everybody's sort of looting the family mansion, and somebody stole the silver, and somebody's cutting the pictures out of the frames. And, roughly speaking, we're watching our elders live it up in a way that doesn't make sense to the rest of us.
Okay, so if it's the last hurrah, this is the time for leaders to step up.
No, we're not ready yet. We're not ready.
I just disagree with that.
I call out, the head of the CDC should resign. The Surgeon General should resign. Trump should resign. Pelosi should resign. De Blasio should resign.
But they're not going to resign.
I understand that. So that's why. So we'll wait.
No, but that's not how revolutions work. You don't wait for people to resign. You step up and inspire the alternative.
Do you remember the Russian Revolution of 1907?
It's before my time.
But there wasn't a Russian Revolution of 1907.
So you're thinking we're in 1907, not 1917.
I'm saying you're too early.
But we got this, Spanish flu came in 1718. So I would argue that there's a lot of parallels there. World War One.
I think it's not time yet. Like John Prine, the songwriter, just died of COVID. That was a pretty big.
Really?
Yeah.
By the way, yes, of course, I every time we do this, we discover our mutual appreciation of obscure, brilliant, witty songwriters.
Well, he's really quite good, right?
He's really good. Yeah, he died.
My understanding is that he passed recently due to complications of corona. So we haven't had large enough shocking deaths yet. Picturesque deaths of a family that couldn't get treatment. There are stories that will come and break our hearts. And we have not had enough of those. The visuals haven't come in.
But I think they're coming.
Well, we'll find out.
But that you have to be there. You have to be there when they come.
But we didn't get the visual, for example, of falling man from 9/11.
Right.
So the outside world did, but Americans were not. It was thought that we would be too delicate. So just the way you remember Pulitzer Prize winning photographs from the Vietnam era, you don't easily remember the photographs from all sorts of things that have happened since because something changed in our media. We are insensate. We cannot feel or experience our own lives and the tragedy that would animate us to action.
Yeah, but I think I think there's going to be that suffering that's going to build and build and build in terms of businesses, mom and pop shops that close. And I think for myself, I think often that I'm being weak and I feel like I should be doing something. I should be becoming a leader on a small scale.
You can't. This is not World War II, and this is not Soviet Russia.
Why not? Why not?
Because our internal programming, the malware that sits between our ears, is much different than the propagandized malware of the Soviet era. I mean, people were both very indoctrinated and also knew that at some level it was BS. They had a double mind. I don't know. I mean, there must be a great word in Russian for being able to think both of those things simultaneously.
You don't think people are actually sick of the partisanship, sick of incompetence?
Yeah, but I called for revolt the other day on Joe Rogan. People found it quixotic.
Well, because I think you're not. I think revolt is different. I think ask like
Okay, I'm really angry.
yes.
I'm furious. I cannot stand that this is my country at the moment. I'm embarrassed.
So let's build a better one.
Yeah.
Right. That's the
I'm in.
okay. So well, I
Okay,
mean,
but like,
that's something I
so
think
let's
about
take
a lot.
over a few universities. Let's start running a different experiment at some of our better
exactly.
universities. Like when I did this experiment, I said, "What at this? If this were 40 years ago, the median age, I believe, of a university president was 51. That would have the person in Gen X, and we'd have a bunch of millennial presidents, a bunch of more than half Gen X. It's almost 100% baby boom at this moment. And how did that happen? We can get into how they changed retirement, but this generation above us does not feel, or even the older generation, silent generation. I had Roger Penrose on my program,
Excellent conversation.
and thank you, really appreciate that. And I asked him a question that was very important to me. I said, "Look, you're in your late 80s. Is there anyone you could point to as a successor that we should be watching? We can get excited." I said, "Here's an opportunity to pass the baton." And he said, "Well, let me hold off on that." I was like, "Oh, is it ever the right moment to point to somebody younger than you to keep your flame alive after you're gone?" And also, like, I don't know whether I'm just going to admit to this. People treat me like I'm crazy for caring about the world after I'm dead, or wanting to be remembered after you're gone. Like, well, what does it matter to you? You're gone. It's this deeply sort of secular, somatic perspective on everything, where we don't. You know that phrase in As Time Goes By? It says, "It's still the same old story, a fight for love and glory, a case of do or die." I don't think people imagined then that there wouldn't be a story about fighting for love and glory. And like, we are so out of practice about fighting, rivals for love and fighting for glory in something bigger than yourself.
But the hunger is there.
Well, that was the point then, right? The whole idea is that Rick was, he was like Han Solo of his time. He's just like, I stick my neck out for nobody. It's like, oh, come on, Rick. You're just pretending. You actually have a big soul, right? And so at some level, that's the question. Do we have a big soul, or is it just all bullshit?
See, I think there's huge Manhattan Project style projects, whether you talk about physical infrastructure or going to Mars, the SpaceX, NASA efforts, or huge scientific efforts.
Well, we need to get back into the institutions, and we need to remove the weak leadership. That we have weak leaders, and the weak leaders need to be removed, and they need to seat people more dangerous than the people who are currently sitting in a lot of those chairs.
Or build new institutions.
Good luck.